Gwan, how you there? What's good? And you know who this is, baby. The number one podcast in America, dedicated to all you kings and queens of color, homies and homettes, shotters, woo gals, G-boys, and charges. The one and only Jerk Jollof and Collard Greens podcast.
What's good, and thanks for tuning in to another episode. Today we will cover the topic of cultural appropriation and the 4 types associated with it. Some will say it's a form of flattery, while others will say it's disrespectful and it should be checked. Well, we're about to find out where the pod sides with on this issue. If you're not already a follower, perhaps tuning in for the first time and would like to learn more about the show, then definitely check us out on Instagram and Facebook at Jerk Jollof Collard Pod to show us some love, subscribe, so we can provide additional ways for you to reach us and also get on a recording. Just pay attention to the outro at the end of this. Rip yours. So this shout out is dedicated to Atlanta Breakfast Club. Try Atlanta Breakfast Club for breakfast and Southern food, including fried chicken and waffles, breakfast tacos, peach cobbler French toast. That sounds delicious. Fried green tomato BLT biscuit, shrimp po' boy, and more. The restaurant is owned by Anthony Sanders and Cyrus Ballard. Cyrus? Sorry if I messed that up. For more information, check out their website at atlantabreakfastclub.com. That's ATLANTABREAKFASTCLUB.com. All right. I'm going to have to mirror Glenn on this one because I like it so much. Here's a check-in and open question. Before we get into that, everyone is here besides Tracy Padre. Wepa! We're going to miss you for this one. We got Glenn, we got D-Black, we got Francis, and we are going to roll through this. So Biden announced historic oil reserve release to reduce gas prices. It is stated that the release will be equal to the amount of 180 million barrels of oil, as per CNN. First of all, how do y'all feel about this? And second, are you going to go to the pump, fill up your car, and then fill up a few gas tanks as well to have on reserve in the house, in the garage, on the floor, so you can use 2 to 3 years from now when we run out of gas?
I don't understand why the gas already in the container already got to be more expensive. Someone said this. I forgot what comedian mentioned this.
Not even here yet. We're not even using that gas yet.
We already paying more for it.
We paid more for it.
Oh no, it was Trevor Noah. He was like, because you know how like there's gas already in the container, so like at the very bottom, that's the gas he wants because it's already been there. It's cheaper. It's stale. It's old. Let me get that one. Let me get the stale gas.
Stale gas going to jack up your engine.
Hey, but I can afford the stale gas, so I'm thinking. No, but I don't know. I'm not gonna do anything crazy like that. I mean, there was a situation where we had like a whole gas kind of craziness last year, and people were literally like filling the trucks.
Yeah,
putting gas in the back of their pickup truck and doing all this. Like, I don't think all that is necessary, you know. But that's just my opinion. I'm just, fill up like normal, and just kind of ride it out. It's gonna come back down, I believe.
Yeah, I don't know if that Biden's effort would actually help. I'm not sure if there's any evidence to suggest that it would. I mean, at this point, I appreciate any type of relief we could possibly get. But who's to say that it goes down a couple cents today and a week later it shoots back up like another 20, 30 cents and corrects itself? So it really just depends on how everything plays out overseas as well. But I mean, at this point, I'm open to any type of relief I can get because I'm legit contemplating if I'm going to work on my days I'm supposed to go to work. It's just like I might have to say, nah, I'm sick today. Oh, what? I gotta go in on Tuesdays. I'm sick. Oh, Thursday, I gotta go in. I'm sick. Friday, I'm sick too.
I'm always sick.
I haven't gotten a inflation raise yet. I haven't gotten any.
Bro, that's what I'm saying.
So,
they're not coming.
Hey, some people are getting this stuff, man. I don't know where, but we ain't getting it. I felt this is what I think. I think people, the new hires, get it, not the current employees. I think if you're coming to the company, they increase your maybe incoming rate to entice you to get on the company, but the existing customer employees don't I don't think see those pay increase. But anyways,
Mm.
to answer your point, Chunky, screw the gas, bro. I'm going electric, man. So Tesla, Lucid.
Oh, you
That's
got
beautiful.
80
I'm,
grand in your pocket,
Beautiful.
$160,000. Like
Whole
that's
new car.
I mean, are you checking
Yeah.
are you counting my pockets, man? You
Nah,
don't know.
so
You
like-
know I ain't got no 60, 80K
so
in my pocket.
the reason why I say that, first of all, noted.
Fair.
Second, so the whole big thing, the Build Back Better Act. So that's super helpful if that ever gets passed with the tax rebate of like 12,500 for electric vehicles. Some electric vehicles are coming out now are hella expensive. So some people out there would love to switch to electric. But if you can't get an electric car, maybe get an electric scooter, maybe get an electric bike. It may suck in the winter or in the rain. But yeah, I think with this happening, there's been more of an emphasis to go to a more reasonable level of energy consumption, right? So I think electric vehicles are going to be a thing, but they're expensive as hell right now.
They are. But I mean, I think I never really look into this. I know Tesla went for like their, I think Model 3 isn't like, I think they set it to be like 40K or something like
Like
that.
35, something like
35, 40K. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I never really.
Is that like with like hand powered windows where like you still got to crank up the window?
That's the base model.
That's the base model. I mean, just like, my current car is a base model, so I don't care about the level it is as long as I have a car,
Yeah,
I mean,
nah, I completely understand that.
yeah.
I get it.
Anyways, that's just my 2 cents.
I appreciate you. Thank you for your 2 cents.
No,
on
it
this matter.
I'm just joking.
Nah, I love it. Oh, yeah. Speaking of that topic, what do you feel about electric cars across the panel? Like, do you think it's something with the gas prices where they are now? It's something that's going to be a good future purchase, or you think it's something that it sounds good right now, but there's still more to be figured out?
I think.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead. I always go first. You go ahead.
All right. Look at this. We're the battle of kindness. But so electric cars are great because they do help solve one problem. Because they obviously the reduction of emissions into the environment, a little bit more eco-friendly. And then but the perception that they're automatically more cost-friendly is actually a little bit of a delusion. And the reason why I say that is because, obviously as gas prices rise or as we have less petroleum in the, within our society, thus the price will rise, supply versus demand. But as electricity, the demand for electricity also rises, it will also go through a very similar kind of process. And as things become more electric, our current infrastructure electrical infrastructure that we have, it actually can't sustain it. So if everyone had electric cars, we actually could not sustain it. Like, just look it up, because the electrical infrastructure that we have is very, very much outdated. So we actually need to rebuild that and rebrand it. So the entire system can't handle everyone getting electric cars. So if we update the infrastructure, I'm all for it. But if in the current state,
infrastructure plan is in the works. Infrastructure bills in the works, D-Black.
What'd you say?
2025.
I mean, what was it, 2022? I'm just pointing out that there's still an issue. I'm not saying
Nah,
you're saying it, but you don't present it as if it's resolved already, because it's not.
No, we're not saying it's resolved. We're just
Mm-mm.
saying no, you have very valid facts just pushing towards that direction in a sense. Like, will that be helpful in the moving forward after this situation? So we're so dependent on not even our own gas here, but if we have electric grids that can sustain, then we're pretty much just taking care of ourselves at the end of the day.
Confirmed.
Noted.
Is that a new form of noted? Like,
I forgot what your little catchphrase was.
Confirmed. Like, okay, thanks.
What was
The
the giving zero fucks episode? That's your way of saying this shit.
Oh yeah, that's
Yeah.
noted.
Oh boy. No, I mean, I think what's going on right now is gonna really push the adoption of electric cars and just more even push us to the next, to Web 3.0. I think, a lot of the things we're seeing in Ukraine, and it's even going to push a lot of adoption to a lot of the futuristic stuff that we've all been talking about or been reading about. So it's going to be interesting how things change around us, and I'm looking forward to that stuff, man, because I'm ready for my Bitcoin to be $1 million. So,
Feel you on that.
you know what I'm saying? All right.
But I guess to chime in on these points as far as costs, like other costs that people don't see is that when you got to get that electric vehicle maintained, you can't go to the hood mechanic, shout out to the hood mechanics, down the street anymore. You may have to end up going to Tesla and getting that and paying that hefty bill and repair. There's no corner cutting with that. You know, I think people don't also look at the kind of pain that goes into owning a car like that. Typically, you're on the road. You could go to any gas station right now in your combustion vehicle. May not be a charging, to these back point, there may not be a charging station at every gas station that you go to. You know what I mean? So now you got to make a conscious decision to be like, all right, I'm on the road. How much charge do I have? How long will it last? Where's the nearest charging station just in case I need to, to get some more energy? And then also, if you're someone that's driving constantly, you may have to look at outfitting your home to hold a charger. And that's another cost right there as well. So in the long run, yeah, like it's an improvement, a necessary one, but it also comes with costs where I feel like, maybe locally, statewide, we have to look at ways if we want everyone to really make that transition to make it both cost effective, not only in the pocket, but as far as the labor that's needed to actually maintain the vehicle and keep it running. Because I feel like the used market for electric vehicles is going to be trash. You know what I mean? Because for the most part, not a lot of people are going to want to accept a secondhand electric vehicle, in my opinion, where you can't necessarily spot out all of the issues that you may have. And you may have to end up going back to Tesla to get that junk fixed. So it's like, and that junk is, if you gotta go to the dealer, it's gonna be expensive. You know what I mean? So for the most part. So I think those are all things that we have to be able to help adapt the scalability of it as well for the owners to make it less painful.
I would say so. Just looking it up, there are a lot more than we think. Speaking of maintenance, like from what I've understand, is like it's like over the air updates and software updates to your vehicle. It's not like how it was before. You got to bring it in, you got to get a tune up, you got to do this, you got to do that. Most of that stuff can be done pretty much via just logging in. The company logs into your vehicle and makes the adjustment. When it comes down to brakes, rotors, all that stuff, and tires, yeah, you can't avoid that, right? So yeah, those hood mechanics will not be hood mechanics anymore. They'll be your hipster new age techie mechanics that you probably roll up to someone's garage at their house and they can just knock it out. So things would change as far as like used vehicles. I think people will be more accepting of it later on. I understand your point. Like not right now. It's just like it's not going to be a good thing. So I don't think the comfortability of electric vehicles is where it needs to be in the United States. But just like anything with new technology, it'll eventually get there in like a decade or so. So nonetheless, I do want to see a black owned EV company pop out somewhere. That would be super dope to see that.
It'd be called Static Shock.
Static Shock.
like the comic book character.
Yeah, it didn't do so well, so it's not called Static Shock. But yeah, that'll be super dope. Speaking of which, let's get into what we're talking about. It would be cultural appropriation, Black America's greatest double standard. What does cultural appropriation mean to you, Francis?
Damn, bruh. Okay. You know what? I'll keep it simple. Yeah. So the way I would define it is really, taking something that has such a cultural significance to a group, such as, the way they dress, the way they move or dance, their way of life, food, etc. And you kind of making it your own, right? Without giving a proper recognition to that group. So, and I know we'll kind of get into all the detail of that, but I think really one of the biggest thing about that is really like, you don't, the dominant group that usually tends to do that, they don't have to carry the burden that comes with, the reality of that group, right? So, and we can really kind of dive into some of those examples later on, but ultimately just making something that doesn't pertain to your culture and kind of really making it yours and not giving the proper credit to that group, to the minority group of that, yeah, in that example.
Well, that's interesting. If I could kind of, because when I think of cultural appropriation, I do agree with some of your definition there, cuz, because I do think that you're basically taking a part of another culture and bringing it into your own. But I think one part thing that you put in your definition is giving credit to the culture that you're adopting things from. And I don't think that necessarily matters. If something is associated with, being Nigerian and you give it credit as like, oh, I took this from Nigerian, I don't think that changes, how that, whether it is appropriation or not, it's still appropriation.
I mean, it does, right? I mean, I think it does because, for example, if I invite you to, if I invite someone who's white to a Nigerian wedding, and they decide to wear like a Nigerian outfit, we are inviting them to join our society, right? So they are invited, and she's given homage because she's maybe excited about being part of that culture, and because there's other white people that you can invite that doesn't care about about the outfit. So like it's a way of her feeling like, you know what, I love the vibe. I want to be part of the vibe. I actually love the music too. So let me get in here and get dirty and twerk a little bit, and do some Afro dance or whatever. I don't know. I was actually looking for the reggae. So what do the Jamaican do?
Don't pull us in this. Don't pull us in
You guys reggae. I was looking for the actual like that's the
dance hall,
dance
like
hall,
pasa
whatever,
pasa and all that.
Yeah, like I was looking for more like that terminology. But anyways, the point is, but versus someone who didn't get that, right, and just kind of just like, oh yo, I mean, Kim Kardashian is like it's always like it's like always an example of that, right? And we have Beyonce. We can kind of get into that later too, but yeah.
But still, like, I still think that. But then, all right, I'll let I know everybody else has to get a definition, but
what's your definition?
No, well, I think that's what I said. Like, my definition is just simply, assimilating aspects of another culture that you traditionally do not identify with, and just that. Like, as far as like your inflection about it, I think that there is, like, in society we add all these things to it, like regardless of how you feel about it, you can assimilate someone's culture without having a negative impact. I mean, without having negative thoughts or positive thoughts. There's blackface, and then there's eating puff and other Nigerian foods, or eating Caribbean food, or eating Mexican food, or wearing someone else's like traditional garb. It's still all cultural appropriation, but the person that defines it as good or bad is going to be the person that's of that culture that you're appropriating. Like, they can determine if they see it as you're trying to show reverence, or they see it as you're trying to, say something negative.
So I want to roll back a second. You mentioned blackface in that.
Yeah.
That's a costume, bro. That's a part.
That's appropriation, though. That's appropriation.
Yeah, that is appropriation.
Yeah, but
man.
And
that's what I'm saying. And the reason why
the
reason why,
yeah, thanks, Fran. Like, I was gonna say that, like, that's not a clean cut, like, oh, that's cultural appropriation. Like, there's so much to unpack in blackface where like
right.
it can be seen as that, but like but not to knock anything else that's culturally appropriated.
And the reason why I went to blackface, and then
I agree, it is blackface.
It's because it's the reason why I was trying to show the dichotomy of the two extremes, right? Because blackface, even though there's other things that go into it, right? The purpose was to try to, to reference Black entertainers of the time and basically make a comedy of it. Negative perception versus this other side of, I'm cooking traditional food from this other culture because I think that the food is really good.
So just a couple things I want to unpack to make sure like everyone's like clear, because like you pointed like blackface was attributed to like black entertainers at the time, and not towards a culture of like making not even fun of, but it's a derogatory thing towards an entire like race of people. So like I'm just trying to make sure it's clear. So that's what I'm just asking you. Like it just sounds like there's a little bit more unpacking for that. That's a heavy, that's a loaded one, right? So I just want to make sure it's unpacked appropriately.
Yeah, and like I said, I don't think, and I agree with you. I don't think it's I mean, we could do a whole podcast talking about blackface just alone, right? Because it is a complicated topic. But you know, again, it's still a form of, I would define that as appropriation, because they're trying to, the individuals that were doing it, regardless of their objective, they were ultimately trying to assimilate something from another culture that was not their own.
Well, I mean, I would say, because I do agree that blackface should be deemed a form of cultural appropriation, because essentially you're pulling characteristics of a people and using it in a way to potentially find it offensive or undesirable, or to even exploit that culture of people. So, I mean, there's a lot to unpack because there's a very hard history behind it. But at the end of the day, appropriation in the sense where, okay, I'm going to paint my face black. I'm going to make my lips swell. I'm going to shuck and jive for you and feed you this image of a people, which that's not even true. You know what I mean? So you are taking aspects of that culture and misusing it and using it for the purpose of exploitation. That's not to say that there aren't forms of appropriation that aren't positive. There are positive aspects of appropriation that happen even as cultures exchange things between themselves that somewhat happen naturally. And I think we'll get into like the 4 different methods of appropriation. But like to me, I would say, because everyone gave really good examples, like blackface was top of my list as an example of cultural appropriation. But I say if a white person decided to wear dreadlocks, and this is one that you get a lot, right? In my opinion, if a white person decided to wear dreadlocks, that's not cultural appropriation. To me, that's just a hairstyle. You know what I mean? Like, in a sense, yeah, they're taking something they've seen from another black person, or seen from a black person or a black culture, or something that's not natural to them. But I wouldn't define that as negative cultural appropriation. You know what I mean? Now, if a white guy decides, I'm gonna grow dreads, I'm gonna smoke a big ganja spliff, and hereby today call me a Jamaican, to me, that's cultural appropriation in a negative sense, because he's taking aspects of the culture which he's using to kind of identify a whole body of people or a minority culture, and trying to use that as an image to say, hey, I'm a Jamaican now, refer to me as a Jamaican. You know what I mean? Because I smoke ganja spliffs and I got dreadlocks. And, you know, and that's a poor representation of the people.
Yeah, Glenn, I actually disagree with that, man. Because actually just had we just had a presenter at my job, and she actually talked about the Crown Act. I don't know if you guys looked that up. Is
Korean natural styles, yeah.
No, the Crown Act is actually an initiative that was started by Dove, the soap, because they want to actually really put a lot of focus on, especially like African Americans in workplace, because so 80% of Black women are more likely to agree with this statement that they had to change their hairstyle to be accepted into to like for work, and like
it's appropriation too.
Right, but the reason why I brought that up is because of the cornrows part, the braid part. As a Black woman, and talking about natural hair now, because that's really what the focus was about. When we have braids and cornrows and all this stuff, there's a negative significant that like imagery that's attached to that, or a stereotype that as a Black person that we have to carry with. Right. For me, having long hair, I remember for the longest time, I struggled with even the idea, because one of my parents thought, the clean cut, short hair was the ideal look you should have at a workplace versus, having more of the nappy, fro look. And, as a Black man, I had to even think about that before I felt comfortable enough in my own skin. You know what? I'm gonna like, regardless of what hairstyle I go to work with, it's really about what makes me happy. And having a longer, more nappy look is what makes me happy. And as a white woman, you don't have to carry those burden with you when you decide to just braid your hair. You don't have to like deal with like somebody saying, you know what, we don't actually agree with that look. You need to go home and take that off. But as a black woman, we are more fearful of that because the presenter was at my job and she talks about black women are more target black males. It doesn't matter. We have to like, and that's why it's like the dominant group don't have to worry about a lot of that stuff. That's really where the trauma comes in, right? So I'll let you kind of respond to that.
Yeah, so I mean, basically with the Crown Act, it basically just says, hey, not to say to diminish it at all, but basically people of color should not be discriminated nor not allowed fair chance of employment because of their natural hairstyles. So basically we should be able to
Right.
enter the workforce and not feel like we have to assimilate to Western ideals. And that's exactly what's happening with a lot of Black women. They feel like, and that's appropriation by dominance, by definition. You're subjected to a culture and its ideals, and you're expected as the minority culture to assimilate to those ideals in order to survive and get ahead. And that's the issue where we have. I'm just not seeing how that pairs up with my statement as far as a white person deciding to wear dreadlocks. That just them styling their hair. They're not here claiming to be a Jamaican, or if that makes them another race or another culture of people. To me, I don't see any issue with someone wanting to style their hair.
I mean, I'm
No
not
matter
saying
what they
it's
want to
bad.
style it
I'm not
as.
as bad. I think one of the core part of it is really just before you do something, you like fully understand the importance of what you're trying to do, right? So, and not just doing it because it's what you see trending on TikTok or social media, or you see your friend doing it now. I want to do it, or I'm having a baby by a black man, so I want to get me a black man. It's like it's not,
Yeah.
you just want to follow. I think that's what it is really making it more of a trendy or custom, more of a like it's more of the trendy part of it that makes it more like I think that's really where the issue is the intention, and I know it's harder to really measure intention, right? So I think that's where really where it's hard to really define, to really figure that part out, and that makes
I
it
get what you're
complex.
saying, and
Yeah.
it's like, to me, like, I feel like, yeah, it's not fair. We should be able to wear our natural hairstyles. We should be able. I feel like Black people in particular have the hardest kind of expressing their culture and not being reprimanded for it or not being looked down upon for it, and that's the real big issue there. Because honestly, if Becky decides to get cornrows, I'm not sure how that's stopping any one of us from getting a job. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
it's like there's a lot more to it than just that. But does the Crown Act mean that, yeah, we're still going to get fair treatment when it comes to employment? I don't know. You know what I mean? But it's a relief that, okay, it sucks that there has to be a law that says you can wear your natural hair. The same way it sucks, there has to be a law that says it's a crime to lynch people. But,
So
those are also two laws that passed recently.
yeah, so to very valid points on both ends. It seems like we're at a good agreement in it. So just for the audience, so the Crown Act is HR 2116. It's creating a respectful and open world for Natural Hair Act of 2022, or the Crown Act of 2022. This bill prohibits discrimination based on a person's hair texture or hairstyle if that style or texture is commonly associated with a particular race or national origin. Specifically, the bill prohibits this type of discrimination against those participating in federally assisted programs, housing programs, public accommodations, and employment. Persons shall not be deprived of equal rights under the law and shall not be subjected to prohibited practices based on their hairstyle, texture, or style. This bill provides for enforcement procedures under the applicable law. So it passed the House on March 18th, 2022. So very, very valid points. Just wanted to clear that up real quick because it speaks to what Glenn's saying, it speaks to what you're saying, Francis. It sucks to have bills that have to state that I should be comfortable with my own skin as a person of color. But to be honest and forthcoming, just look at the history of America, right? So we have to realize that it shouldn't be a fight to be treated as equal people, but it is now a fight to be treated as equal people, even now in 2022, where we think people will have more acceptance than they had back in the 17 or 1600s or starting from 1619 moving forward. It's really a shitty situation, but also to cover cultural appropriation and definition from Wikipedia, cultural appropriation is the inappropriate or unacknowledged adaptation of an element or elements of one culture or identity by members of another culture or identity. This can be controversial when members of a dominant culture appropriate from minority cultures. So it speaks to everything that everyone has been saying. It's really shitty, to be honest. But my question to you guys is that, do you think it's subjective when you look at cultural appropriation, or you think there's a complete objective view when, like, this is completely wrong? You can't, wear, Nigerian garb, take over an entire, local bank and then run a business how you want to run it, or become an electrical engineer, or like whatever the in the mix, or eat puffs while you're at work. So all the stuff I just named, it's just like, well, how do you view it? Do you view it more offensive when it's your own culture, or do you stand on the righteous path where it's any minority culture that's culturally appropriated?
So for me, I mean, I think you kind of asked two questions there. So for the first part, if it's my culture, I think in general, we naturally have a pride. As human beings, we have a pride of self-identification and things that are with us and being parts of groups and exclusive groups. So, having someone kind of enter your club uninvited that doesn't truly in your belief belong there, that they don't, like, even if we go to like a Nigerian party and we see somebody that's not Nigerian, and we're not Nigerian garb, everybody kind of looks at them funny and tries to figure them out. Like, do they know what they're doing? Like, why are they
Not
here?
Nigerian.
Yes, they're not Nigerian. Like, everybody thinks about it, Now the question is, how do they carry themselves from that point on will kind of lead to you making some decisions, or not decisions, but making some perceptions about that person, right? So basically, is their intent good or bad, right? Now, certain things, again, there are certain things as a society that we have made rules about that you can't do, right? That there is no safe way to do it. That's where blackface and all those other kind of examples, kind of come from. But then there's things where we're still kind of debating on, like wearing dreads or something like that. Like, can Becky wear dreads? Is it something that's like, is it something odd? Is it an oddity? Is she trying to culturally appropriate? Or is it really just a hairstyle? Do we really care? And those are the ones that we're kind of, as a society, we're continuing to debate on. Me personally, when it comes to all of this, if something is from another culture or even identify with another culture, I think it's fine in general to emulate it, as long as the emulation is in a positive way. My other part, now taking that general statement out, when it comes to work, that's the only thing. When it affects your money, that's the only time that these things kind of truly matter, from my opinion. Because, like, when you go to work, I mean, as a minority, and you feel like, I cannot have dreads, I can't wear my hair this way, I can't wear this type of clothes, I have to wear a suit, I can't wear because every culture has their own high level of professional garb, right? Not everybody's highest level of attire is a suit, right? But if you're going to work and you're going to wear your most professional attire, you're not going to wear your cultural most professional attire. You're going to wear a suit, So those type of things, like when it works in that way, where we're forced to kind of assimilate to this identity that we all have to wear this type of clothes, we all have to shave our heads, we can't dye your hair, you can't look this way. That's where I feel like that's where the problem comes from.
So speaking to that real quick, so some companies have like their own dress code and they rightfully should have it, right? So you're talking about conforming to a company's image, which they have the right to manage. So even if you step into a company where you're just like, hey, I can't wear a dread. So even if you're in that company, why not bring it up and have that discussion where it's just like you talk to HR, like, hey, dreads are clean. It's a professional, it's a symbol of professionalism in other places that represent me. Can we sit down and can we talk about it? Can we actually have the conversation, i.e., where the Crown Act comes into play? It's just like, yeah, it should be a conversation piece. It shouldn't be like I'm avoiding this job because I'm not allowed to do certain things, but that job may not have the knowledge of what's like acceptable for a particular culture. So they have to be educated, and that education may be a slow burn, right? So I wouldn't say get turned off from it, but kind of weigh that out, right? So I wouldn't say like, oh, I have to shave my head, shave my beard, wear a suit. Hey, this is equatable to a suit in Nigeria or in Jamaica. Let me show you some examples. Let's talk through this and let's make some headway.
I think that's a great point. And I totally agree with you. It's just the only challenge is that sometimes, not every organization is
Mhm.
this way. Some people willing to work with you, but just even getting to that point where you have to have a conversation, some people just don't have the headache. I don't want to have the headache for this. I don't have the time for this conversation. This is our dress code. This is it, and then you kind of get dismissed. So you'll have lesser opportunities, but there will be those organizations that, like to Chunky's point, that will work with you.
Yeah, so organizations can set like their decorum, like some parts, like in the military, you gotta, for the most part, you have to cut your hair. You can't go in there with dreadlocks and box braids and stuff like that, right? So, I mean, I know private employers can also determine what styles are acceptable, what clothes are acceptable in the place of work, and those are like some things you have to weigh. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten ish about my beard at my job. And it's just like, yo,
They hate that beard.
they do not like the beard. So I'm just like, screw y'all. Well, what most people do anyway. Cut it before you take that interview and then just grow it back while you're at the job. It's too late.
I mean, is that like the
savage.
right way to like present yourself?
Yes, that's the right way to do it.
Well, that's
It grew back on its own.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it just came out of nowhere. My
That's
wife
funny.
loves it, so I don't know.
Yeah.
No, I think Shay mentioned this in the last episode. He talked about imagery. I think, I mean, if you're in sales, depending if you are a customer facing position in your job, then obviously your company, they are a little bit more invested in how you present yourself to their customers. So, but I understand, man. I think there's a lot of layers to that because the point of the presenter that we had, she was presenting at my company function. We have like African descent forum, and she was one of the presenters, and we had a lot of exec person on the call. And I think the purpose of that conversation was to really hone in on the challenges that like people of color, especially African American, have to deal with in corporate, right? So, and which kind of really ties back to like how long, the stress, or even like, oh my God, I can't go to work looking like this because, I have to spend like I have to wake up maybe 3 hours even before I have to be at work so I can get ready. And that even like already puts you out of like the mindset to so even bring your full self to work, then also impact your productivity as well. So it really kind of ties into a lot of the mental state of your employees, and as an employer, and you invest in so many of your, of your team, you do want to like make sure you really focus on all of that stuff. So,
Yeah.
but to answer your question, I think it's subjective, man, because I think just, how Glenn and I were kind of really going back and forth with the conversation about the cornrows and the braids. I think it really depends on the individual and what you find really important. One thing that I found really interesting is, when Trump was, talking about, building a bridge, the defense, right, or the wall versus, U.S. versus Mexico, and you would swear even people who love to go to Mexico and love the culture in Mexico, love to travel there, are also one of the people who are for in like building a wall and separating themselves out of that group that they, at least in my mind, I was looking at it like, you guys love the culture, you guys love everything about, like, at least some people who act like they do, but when it was time to be maybe objective for another race or another group, you see them like fall back to the natural state, right? But like, where were you at, in that, at least for those people who were supporting, I know like we kind of maybe more political, more like, politics stuff right there. So I'll kind of maybe get away from that. Um, but just kind of make me think about stuff like that. And ultimately, when I think about appropriation, is really what am I gaining out of it? Is it for clout? When I think about that Beyonce album, like a lot of, even though I love what she did, and I think there was a lot of backlash for her, when she did that, because some people feel like she didn't give the African artists enough credit, right? They feel like she was taking ownership of the Afro beat movement at that time, so, but like ultimately it really comes down to the personal gain that you get out of it. If you're looking for clout, likes, really revenue, money, it's all of that stuff. So I'll stop there.
So my one question is, because I don't know, the more I sit here and more I think about this topic, I really attribute, as my cousin said, clout. I think ultimately it really kind of comes down to power. And the reason why I say that is because within your culture, you again, the sense of belonging, the sense of self, the sense of ownership. And when people use something that's of yours without your permission, it feels icky. It feels like, you feel uncomfortable with that, because it's like that person doesn't have right to use that. That doesn't have right to use that word. They don't have the right to use that attire. They don't have the right to, associate themselves with this respective group. So it kind of takes some power away from the group that actually owns that thing, right? That owns that respective cultural, item or relic, right? And then even on the other side, when I was speaking of like in a working fashion, it really comes down to power again, because to your example, because to our last episode when we were talking about sales and real estate and everything like that, and there's a certain look that a salesperson must have, because that's what the buyer finds acceptable. So the power is with the buyer. So the buyer is the person that's going to be determining what's an acceptable attire, right? So the customer. So then we're ultimately assuming that the customer only aligns with this westernized ideology, right? Because they only are going to see they're only going to buy from people who wear suits. They're only going to buy from people who, wear very specific professional garb. If I show up in a professional Nigerian attire, they're not going to buy from me, because of the fact that they don't associate. They don't deem that individual as professional. Does that not make sense? Or are you not following what I'm saying?
So I got two things to say, one to your point and one to Francis, right? Is there a law against me wearing whatever the fuck I want to wear?
No.
All right. Let me finish.
There's consequence.
Let me finish. I'm gonna fucking do it. Right.
Unless you're butt naked.
I mean, that's not wearing anything. So if I decide to listen to your cultural music, if I decide to wear your cultural clothing, you have to fucking deal with it, right? Because it's a free country. So I don't care how you feel or what you think, I'm going to do it. To Francis's point about the last administration, people want to do things until things get real. Flatline. That's it. So if it's not popular, then people tend to change their minds about it. And specifically to the people they want to be viewed as someone with, or the people that they're affiliated with. So there's going to be a shift and change. And to me, that's not surprising. And that's going to happen no matter what side of the fence you're on. That's just a natural thing for human beings to do. Like you said, I agree. Like, it's time to stick up for other people. Now you don't want to do it, but there's a consequence or a result for my actions. and I'm not prepared to deal with that result. I'm doing it for the clout because it's fun. Oh, let's head down to Mexico to party on, Cinco de Mayo, right? Or let's head down to Mexico because it's fun because I want to make memories. But when it comes down to defending genders or cultures that are different from mine, then I'm going to really weigh it, right? I think someone said it before in the beginning, it's self-preservation. A lot of people that outweighs everything. No matter if it's good or bad, I want to preserve my life before yours, even though if I see something happening to you that's wrong.
Yeah.
And I feel like the only objective thing about appropriation is that there is appropriation. Other than that, whatever constitutes as an example of it is just so subjective these days. Because I feel like our community in particular, our defense mechanism against not being able to express our culture, we are now policing our culture. So it's kind of like, yo, you can't do this, you can't do that, or you can't do this, or you can't do that. And it's so weird because it's like all these identity politics. And at the same time, we want history to recognize all of our efforts, but it's also like we don't want history to use any of our efforts. It's like we don't want other people to use it. And that's like my problem as far as like when it comes to people rocking hairstyles, like, yo, who cares? You know what I mean?
That is such a good point.
But Glenn, that's not the point though. No, that's, it kind of, for me, I don't care if somebody do all of that. Like, I want you to listen to Afrobeat. I want you to dance. I want you to twerk if you want to twerk. That's all good, man. I don't care. What really comes down to it for me is my example about Mexico versus is really when it comes down to Black Lives Matters and like things about when it comes down to Africa stuff, Nigerian focus stuff. Are you there supporting us when we need you? Don't just use it just for your own personal gain. Then when it's convenient for you, then drop it when it's not convenient for you anymore. If you're really about that life, be about that life.
But they can't just pick up. But you can't. But I don't think you can take it.
Like I'm twerking for all my Nigerians out there.
Yeah, like I'm just saying,
No, because see, I get what you're saying.
Like that's all I'm saying.
But I don't think that's fair. I don't think you should have an expectation that just because someone wears a hairstyle of a specific culture that they now must be willing to take arms for everything.
He's saying like if you're repping something, so like if you're repping like Black Lives Matter or like tomatoes matter,
or personal
whatever
gain.
the case may be, yeah. And it's just
gain.
like, all right, now shit's getting real. We need you to stand up and do something. Now it's just like, oh, I'm gonna take this t-shirt off. Oh, I'm gonna swipe my social media because it's to the point where it's no longer cool and convenient. I'm getting static for it, right? And I'm not prepared to handle the static. And I think that's a reasonable expectation where it's just like, yo, if you're about the cause, be about the cause.
I swear, I have an example. I have dudes in college that used to want to be affiliated with the Black athletes or Black guys so much. They like want to listen to us, sag their pants. This is when sagging was a thing, right?
I was hoping you didn't say they were wearing.
But no, we should be associated. But that's not Black culture. That is
no. I mean, but my thing is like, it was
at the time.
No, don't say it was hood culture. We already had this. Hood culture is not Black culture.
No, he's not. No, time out. Stop. Exactly. That's what he's saying. It's like what they were wearing in the 90s in hip hop videos. That's what they were trying to simulate to. Yes.
Okay.
I'm just saying, like, they want to be associated with us for so much. And I remember years after, I'm thinking of one dude in particular right now, because I remember this dude. I always want to be buddy and be cool and stuff. And as soon as you look at social media, like years later, and I'm like, and you have to look back, like, wasn't this dude just, I thought it was one of us. Like, now he's like against us. Like, you look on his social media, like all this like anti-Black stuff. I'm like, yo, now it's not cool anymore to be associated with like being cool, being friends with Black people. Now you can just drop it when it's convenient for you. Like, that was like what I was just kind of like.
I mean,
now I know.
If you about doing something, take your lickings. That's it. When shit gets
real, that's beyond just garb, right? You're talking about like who you associate with, who you hang with, the perception.
I mean, that's all part of that's part of the culture too, right? He was trying to get into the parties and like get girls, like all of that. So he was for his benefit, for his own self gain,
for his clout.
for its clout. It still comes down to stuff. You again, like, what are you trying to get out of it? Is it pure just because you actually care? I just want to wear it because I think it's cute and it's nice, and I'm mindful of the heritage of it, or just whatever, like, versus like, all this stuff that we already kind of talked about. It's just really,
All right,
Now
but
I
what about the
know.
people that don't deem it as, like, to Selassie's point, like Selassie gave the example of, the dreadlocks. What about those individuals that say, this is truly, I don't see this as your culture. I see this solely as a style. I see this solely as a way of being. I don't see this as, I'm like appropriating your culture. Prime example, even Nigerians, like, we get most of our natives from India. Like, we get our material from India, from overseas. Are we appropriating their culture?
But wait, so like, I would say no, because like, this is where you get your material from, right?
No, but
So
they
I don't-
also sew clothes. They also do the
right,
same
right.
kind
So
of
it's
thing.
just like you're looking at pretty much a commodity. So if I get spices from India or spices from Nigeria, is that culture appropriating those two cultures? Or it's just like, oh, these
Yeah,
spices go.
And that's the
with this.
question.
That's
Yeah, and
that's
that's what I'm
exchange.
saying.
Yeah, that's exchange
It's more of a
appropriation. That's
supply.
how a
That's
lot
more
of
like corporate. That's more like regional.
exchange.
So
Like,
you're telling me if I buy a spice from like another country, like I'm culture appropriating them, not because
I
like
mean, if that's indigenous to that
it's an
country,
exchange.
But
they have the material. They have. It's
if I
more
can't
like,
find it anywhere else, like if there's a fruit somewhere, it's just like, oh, this fruit only grows in Australia, right? And I really like this fruit. I like cooking with it. I'm not culture appropriating them. It's just like, yo, like I went there, I had it, I like it. I just want more of it.
but then it is in a sense, because if you weren't exposed to that culture, you would not be exposed to that fruit if it's indigenous to that area.
What if I had it at a restaurant? Like,
But that's what I'm
it's
saying.
more
But now,
trade.
That's all exchange.
It's trade. It's trade. I
That's
mean, like,
exchange.
but
Mhm.
the actual culture of the garment itself is our own.
yeah,
They're
They don't-
appropriating Nigerian culture.
No, I'm saying they are the one making the material because they have more. Because this is more. It can. We're
That's
talking
what
about
I'm
more economic stuff. now.
yeah.
That's different.
Yeah.
Like, that's
Exchange
different.
is a part of appropriation too. What are you talking about? People
Yeah,
have been exchanging.
exchange of cultures.
That's why we got tacos in the States now, because somebody exchanged.
I mean, but
Yo, you
like
want
going by the
taco now?
definition I would say
That's more assimilation, bro. That's more cultural assimilation, bro.
I agree with Fran on this one. Like, if there's a spice I like and it's not grown locally, am I going to like appropriate like Maine's culture or like Florida's culture? It's just like, yo, if this is what I want, I'm gonna go get it. Like I'm mixing it with other stuff and I'm making something like great with it, right? So I don't know. My subjective opinion is just
no,
that,
I think it's a good discussion point, because, like, even for avocados, for example, that is not something that, that's from Mexico. That's where we get it
Right.
from. But even how we prepare it is not something that, like, Americans don't just know. If you don't even know you didn't know if we weren't taking it from Mexico, we wouldn't know what an avocado was. We wouldn't know how to prepare it. We wouldn't know how to make guacamole. It's all stuff that we acquired from another culture. So we
Okay.
appropriated.
So you're saying
I mean,
appropriating?
I mean,
Saying
that's
appropriating a
that's
culture can't be good.
assimilation, cultural
No, I'm saying
assimilation,
I'm
bro.
just saying that you can appropriate aspects of another culture, even to the point of like food. Like, I'm just saying, like, it's something that's constantly happening, and even as Fran was saying and Selassie was saying, it is part of trade. Appropriation is an everyday thing. Like, we subconsciously do it, but that's what I'm saying is like, but when it becomes
So there's an acceptable level of appropriation.
thank you. There's
think
acceptable
so.
levels of
I think so.
appropriation.
Okay, so
Yes.
that's pretty much. I made all this kerfuffle.
I call
to get to
it
that point.
cultural
No, it was good
assimilation,
discussion. I
man.
think it's a good
Because
point.
like at the end of the day, we all are a minority group to the dominant group. So we are trying to assimilate ourselves into this more larger set of community that we are trying to like come into. I know, like, Glenn's over there chuckling,
I'm
but
just
like,
thinking about something. I'm like, I
man,
know Francis loves Jamaican food, and
I
based on
do
what
love
he's saying,
I do love
I just
Jamaican
want
food.
him every time he eats a beef patty. I want you to say, "This is for all my Jamaicans."
No, but Glenn, have I ever not say it? It was after, when did
I
I
love my
appreciate?
Jamaicans.
But
Yeah.
but check it out. Don't I always give you guys homage though? when I do it, do I
Yeah,
give
that's what I
the
said.
homage?
You
That's the
better
point.
Every
pay
time-
homage every
Yo,
time.
Every
I'm
time
being-
you take a bite out that beef
but,
patty.
but it doesn't have to be every time. That's
Oh,
like,
my
see,
God.
now you're losing the focus though. You're losing the core of the message, right?
I got you.
You know what I'm saying? But like the thing is, I didn't actually appreciate Jamaican food until I went to Jamaica. I actually
Yeah.
went to learn about the food. That's really what part of it. When you educate yourself and you learn about the culture, you can partake in the culture when you appreciate it. That's no longer because I've done that. So now after my first, I had that first patty, I took a bite into it. I was like, yo, give me more. Like this shit's fire.
So I haven't been to Nigeria, but I eat some Nigerian food and I enjoy puff puff. So like,
Yeah, you've been into
am
the
I-
Arab Nigerian household. You've assimilated yourself into the group.
Okay.
So like
But I'm
that's
saying, why we automatically associate appropriation with a negative connotation?
It's not
the
negative.
point.
It's not
that's
negative.
the point.
Typically, it's without permission. Yeah, like
Yeah.
by definition, it's the act of taking something without the other person's for your use from someone else, but typically without their permission. So typically, it's not absolute. It could be.
I'm not saying it's a
either
bad
way,
thing,
but-
bro.
But no, appropriation
I'm not-
usually is associated as negative.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's a terrible
Yeah.
thing if you do it, but like I'm saying, this all still depends what you're gaining out of it. If when somebody
mean-
else,
Whenever we go to Nigerian functions, we gotta appropriate, right? If I gotta go to the non-Nigerian table, I gotta sit my ass at the non.
yeah, oh yeah, we are.
I can't
There's a
be like,
non-Nigerian table.
You never been to the non-Nigerian table? Oh man! So
There is a
Well, that's
that's
because
where
oh,
all the
man.
white people and the non-Nigerians sit together. You could automatically identify. Usually, it's in the back, by the toilets, by the kitchen.
Wow.
All right, first of all, it ain't
No,
be-
that's
it don't be
foul,
all
that's
that.
foul.
But
Don't
there
do that.
do be
Don't do
like
that.
a table because it's like, oh, this is my friend from work. This is my so and so, but they not Nigerian, so you don't even know where to put them.
Yeah, so you just put
Stick
them
them in the back with everybody else.
You're not gonna put them with Uncle So-So and Auntie So-So.
But wait,
Mama
like,
So-So.
don't you want them to
You keep the
learn?
young,
man?
you keep
So
people,
you're
young
depriving
people,
them
young people,
of being
bro.
able to like assimilate to the culture.
Exactly. I hate
Like that's
that
kind of
shit.
fucked up.
No,
man.
trust me, you're gonna be assimilated. 'cause
Nah. Why they
Nigerian party,
why
why
they
you
with my
there?
grandma over there eating pounded yam, giving her
You're gonna smell the food.
Look
You're
at
gonna,
up
you're
and
gonna hear the
down.
But
No,
why would you invite someone that you know is going to be a problem?
It's
Like,
not
you're like,
nobody
this
says
is
it's gonna be
not
a
a
problem,
problem.
but you don't want to
So,
give them too
problem-
much culture shock at one time.
But fuck it, like you feel so they're worthy. Like it's either you in
Nah.
Park or eighth gear. That's it. Ain't no in between.
Oh my god.
You have that
I-
conversation. You do your PowerPoint slide. You let them know.
PowerPoint
You send a slide deck. You know.
So
you
Chunky's
educate
never
them.
been to a non-Nigerian table. My God, you have not lived life. You have.
Yes, he
you have
has. He
good
was at the
Nigerian-
wedding. He was at my
But I
wedding.
was sitting with friend.
What you know? He was with
We're part of the
we
bridal
went with
Oh
the
wait,
party.
oh
bridal
yeah,
group.
my bad. Yeah,
I was just like,
for
the
us.
fuck?
Damn.
I was sitting up front. I was like, so like now what?
Yo, this
I
is
forgot.
what it is. If you're not dating one of the key members of the family, then you will sit with the family. But if you're just a coworker, you will sit
I'm
with the
not sure.
coworker group or the friend group. And yeah, usually
Nobody's gonna go to any
You don't-
Nigerian functions now.
you're
Those
not
ones are
gonna
happening.
you're not gonna get the best seat over the family. Come on now.
People,
bad.
people,
No, no.
I'm telling you, our listeners are gonna be like, they're gonna be next time they get invited to a Nigerian function, they're gonna be real
Please hit us up.
auspicious on like
We
who am
will
I getting
Nigerian
seated
parties
with?
send
are-
you.
Who
a
am I getting
slide
seated
deck.
with?
Are lit.
We will give you all the information you
Okay.
need. It will be a side episode. We'll find a lucky guest
The non-Nigerian table.
to educate
It
you
is
at a
so
non-Nigerian
obvious.
table and how to move up through the ranks.
Yeah,
Even
tell us
white
your
people
experience
are
of being on the
confused.
non-Nigerian table.
I
please.
can tell you, even white people are confused. They're like, "Wait, you're black. Shouldn't you be sitting with them?" Why are you sitting with them?
Ah,
And it's like, nah.
That
I'm
is
not,
so
I'm not
funny.
Nigerian.
that is
Mm.
hilarious.
They're like, shouldn't you get a
Boy,
pass?
oh boy. Man. See,
Listen,
so subjective, man.
that's what I'm saying. It's just like at what point do we sit there and we call it for what it is, right? So it's just like it's how I feel about it, or like I can feel differently from Glenn, or Fran, you can feel differently from D Black at any given moment, right? So that confuses the fuck out of somebody. So if I'm sitting there and I'm just like, yo, I want to have a good time in my Nigerian garb, I'm having a good D Black's, it's like, yo, no, you're not Nigerian. Stop. Sit down. And this is like, I don't know what
No,
to do.
I would never do that.
Not you specifically, but like another Nigerian dude that doesn't know me or woman or whatever case.
I mean,
and it's just like I was told to dance like this by Francis, so I'm doing what I was taught to do. I sat through the 30-page slide deck, and I understand how this works.
This is how you spray money.
Like, yeah, so
They said be like in the strip club and throw money in the air. That's
as hard as possible.
This is how you
I brought
spray
my money machine. You know, I'm ready to go.
That's where a culture don't matter at that point. Come on up from that non-Nigerian table.
Money's green.
It's
yo.
shower time.
Yeah. You all the way in the back. Come.
Come here, dance.
Oh, so speaking of which, if I speak with a Nigerian accent, is that cultural appropriation? Being that I've been around in the household a couple of times, I've been around y'all a couple of times, or I speak with a Jamaican accent, is that acceptable? Right? So I've paid my dues, quote unquote. Am I allowed to use it?
First of all, one, you've never paid your dues. There's no such dues. You've never, you just did right now. You sounded like the white dude that hangs with black dudes. That, like, I have enough black friends. I have paid my dues.
No, not enough. I spent enough time in the household and to be accepted.
Well, you're not. If you're not born of it, your dues will never be paid.
Man, I don't know about that.
You can just
ain't pounded yam yet.
Oh man, no, I have a friend that
Which is the yam in my pound?
You ain't pound no yam yet, man.
Yo, I have a friend that I grew up with that he used to come in the house and pray with my family. So like I was like, yo, when you like with the fam and you pray with the fam and you know the time the prayer time is, and I was like, yo, you part of the family at that point. I don't care. You black, you Nigerian at that point.
Once again, I'll be confused as fuck because I'm accepted by Francis and I come out and D-Boy's telling me I haven't paid my dues. So I don't
do
know
what you gotta do, bro. You got my blessing.
Well, I mean, I don't think there's if you do it with respect and I don't think there's ever a negative way to do it. It's when there are those individuals that do it with disrespect. But again, the owners of that culture they're going to be the judge. They will always be the judge. You will not be the judge yourself. No matter how genuine you feel, no matter how, you think that you're empowering these people or really drawing awareness to them, they are the ones that are going to perceive whether you are in the right or in the wrong. And that's just the nature of it.
I mean, I think you said it's really important. I think there's the respect part of it, right? I think that's really is key. So in all of it, your intention and the respect part.
I got a question about that. So let's say, I start my own social media page and it's like a Nigerian social media page and I'm doing all these Nigerian clips and speaking in a Nigerian voice and I get paid a shit ton of money. Mm-hmm. Is that okay?
Well, that's where the homage comes in, bro. It is okay because you gotta that's where it's really
You're trying to say break bread with the elders. That's what homage comes from.
One thing I've noticed, and I think we see this in like TikTok and how like the blonde, skinny white girls get so much followers, and like even like I've seen like white girls who can dance like Afro dance, like whatever in TikTok, and they blow up. They get so much recognition for what they do versus when you see an actual black woman do what they are doing.
You don't think it's impressive?
It is. That's what I'm saying. Like for some reason, they get more clout from doing something that for some reason black women don't get the same level of appreciation for. But when somebody else from the outside the culture do it, they get triple, double, quadruple recognition for it. So I think that's where a lot of black women, especially black women or the black culture, find that's when there's a lot of pushback, right? When you see other people getting accolades for things they do and they're not getting the same rate or even any acknowledgement for it.
Do you think that's like acceptable for any culture? So let's say like I join NASCAR like next week and I think there's another brother that's joining NASCAR and like he may be like the most astonishing thing is like this is such a rarity. So do you think that's okay where like he's showered with praise and like this is amazing, this is awesome, when most of the culture that's there is not African American? So do they have the right to be upset that this dude, he may not win any races, but the simple fact that he's an anomaly in a sport that's not primarily or even like a decent percentage of African American, you think that's acceptable? Or it's just like, yeah, we don't fucking like this person. You need to go somewhere. Like you shouldn't get the praise that you should get. Like it's just
do anybody, I mean, my point to that is, I mean, I think is, since we are living in this country and we are all assimilating to the culture that's attached to, I think, the sport that comes along with the country that we live in, we are all considered, you know, because the American culture is the dominant culture. So like, so we all trying to, you know, kind of get, you know, we all kind of find our ways to assimilate to it. You know, for me as a Nigerian, I had to like, you know, learn how to like, you know, do a lot of things I wasn't accustomed to when I came to this country. So if I picked up car racing at that moment, you know, it is what it is, like skating or playing baseball, playing football, playing basketball. I didn't grow up playing any of those sports in Nigeria. Like, but now, you know, the sport is more global now. So you see a lot of people from other countries playing it, but I wouldn't, I don't think being a race car driver, I won't consider that, at least for me, I won't look at that as an example of that, but maybe I'm wrong because it's part of the sport that's within the culture, the dominant culture that we live in, you know.
so like to go into the point, it's just like that person that is of a POC is an anomaly. And going to your point, like white women blow up from doing like Nigerian dances. So to me, I put them on the same level. It's like, is that acceptable for that particular culture in that setting to get upset? So there is a difference between American culture and African American culture or Mexican American culture. There are certain things that we do differently. So in a sport that's predominantly white, you have a black man or black woman who's breaking into it, or just having a female that breaks into it. They're not doing anything different from anybody else. Do you find it acceptable for?
They pay for that though. I mean, we saw the lynching thing with the. I mean, I forgot Bubba. I forgot his name. I mean, when you are one of the first minority in a more dominated white dominated sport or anything, there's a fee you pay for it.
That's not
You
a
know,
fee. That's
I'm-
like
I mean,
Bubba
not
Wallace.
Bob.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I come
Yeah.
from, but like there's a mental and physical, you know,
So are they allowed to be upset? Is what I'm saying.
I mean,
Can I jump in on this one?
yeah,
please?
go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would just say there is definitely the allure of exoticism when you see something that doesn't necessarily always belong. It's like the world's greatest metaphor, right? Like when you see white women gyrating their hips and twerking, that's kind of like, whoa, because you're not used to seeing that. We usually characterize them as being rhythmless and stoic when it comes to the movement. So same thing when you see a black man, you know, driving NASCARs. There's an allure to it because it's something that's never been done before. And at the same time, for a person of color, I mean, Wendell Scott was the first NASCAR race driver, or American race driver of color. But to see that now is just not a field you see a lot. It's like seeing a dog meow and a cat bark. You know what I mean? It's going to be something about it that's just fascinating. And my thing is like, I don't think it's okay for someone to be upset because someone else is doing something that they saw another culture doing. Like if this person has a genuine love for the dancing, the arts, like dancers, for instance, they learn several different styles of dance. It's a part of their job. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, especially if you want to stay a hired dancer. So at any means, I'm not going to say that it's okay. You know, you shouldn't get upset if you see someone else doing something unless they're intentionally doing it to say, hey, to discredit a culture or to exploit the culture. Then yeah, it's like if you're not paying any respects to the origins of it. If a Finnish woman comes up saying she's doing Niger beat music and she's saying no, it's Finnish dance, I'm gonna be upset because that shit is not Finnish dance. You know what I mean? Like just pay respects to the people that created the art and give respect where it's due, and everything should be fine. So as long as that's being done, nah, you shouldn't be upset. But to speak as far as what's happening with TikTok and people not getting, you know, the proper algorithm or not getting the proper promotion, I feel like that's like a whole nother subject as far as like whether or not people are actually being shown on these platforms. And that's like another issue that we have also.
Valid points.
Yeah, I mean that was well said. I think it was all come down to what like the core of your statement, even though it's well stated, is really the respect of it. And you also did mention, giving credit when credit is due to when it's all said and done. So, but yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, for me, I personally, sure, I love watching those dances on TikTok. I don't care. You know what I'm saying? When it comes,
them little chicken cutlets bouncing.
So for me,
Chicken
I
cutlets.
personally do not care. I think y'all really comes back down to, just making sure those people, give those respect and give those due to the people that definitely recognize it. And they could do that by collaborating with other like, if you go back to like TikTok, collaborating with other dancers who maybe have lesser followers, so they can give visibility to those people who actually they're collaborating with, so they can get maybe a bigger follower. So it's really all really comes down to, so that's an example of giving back and giving recognition to the people who actually source and maybe actually that own that way of movement or whatever.
It's a lot of onus you're putting on people that may not have that same vision. It's the interesting world we live in. I don't take away, like, you have a very valid point. That's how it should be, right? A lot of things should be a certain way that's respectful and honest. So, valid points across the board. Any departing shots?
So whenever Francis eats that beef patty, I want to hear, this is for all my Jamaicans.
Yeah, I already gave my respect, bro. I've
was made by a Jamaican.
It's called Jamaican
Even if it
patty,
wasn't made
bro.
by a Jamaican.
It's a Jamaican patty.
The concept came from Jamaica.
I think you guys missed the point, but definitely, man, I will always give you guys the shout out, man.
every time.
I got what you're saying.
Every time. Every time you eat it.
Yeah, if I need to, I will.
The time you miss it, you're doing it for clout.
Actually, I'm about to go get some Jamaican food this week. Bet. And I'll make sure I'll send you a picture.
No, you gotta put it on the pod Instagram. Every time you have Jamaican food, you have to put it on the pod Instagram.
You gotta do the same thing.
I'm serious from here on out for the rest of this season. Anytime you have it, that is my expectation of you.
Listeners, if y'all don't see these patties coming through, y'all better put him on blast.
Yeah.
Fran, where these patties at?
To be fair, I haven't had patties in a long time, but
you got 30 days.
Hopefully I can make it to one this coming week though. I would love to.
All right. Anybody else? Cool. So for more content or to learn more about the podcast, feel free to check us out at Jerk Jollof Color Pod on Instagram. Podcast episodes drop every Wednesday. Stay tuned for the outro coming up right after this to learn additional ways to reach us and send us your feedback. Like what you hear? Be sure to like, share, follow, and or subscribe, and leave us a review on your platform of choice. Thanks, and see you all again next week. Peace.
Peace.
And that concludes today's episode, but that doesn't mean the conversation has to end. As a matter of fact, feel free to check us out at JJC Podcast on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter for our post-discussion question following the release of this episode. If you are a Black or minority business owner or professional that would like to be featured on the Rep Yours segment of our show, or a listener with some general feedback for the podcast panel, feel free to shoot us an email at jjcpod@gmail.com. As always, likes and comments are always appreciated. Be sure to subscribe or follow to be notified when the next episode releases. And until then, stay safe, stay blessed. Peace.